Hi guys, I'm Ed Clark and today I've got something slightly different for you. Now there are a lot of videos out there telling you how to get better at your instrument, how to get better tone, but there isn't a lot out there about how to get better at gigging. Now gigging is a discipline in its own right, and that means there are things you can do to improve at it. So hopefully these 5 tips that I'm going to give you will be useful to you. Now as I'm a guitarist, the examples I'm going to give are going to be from a guitarist point of view. There's no reason that these tips won't apply to whatever instrument you play. They also apply whether you're headlining, supporting, or part of a festival bill. But that said, when it's your gig, you tend to have a little bit more flexibility in how you operate. So they're probably most applicable when you're either on a festival bill or supporting on somebody else's gig. Now, my band Brave Rival has just finished doing the last 2 shows opening for FM on their 40th anniversary tour. So I thought this was a perfect opportunity to take the camera along and show you some behind the scenes stuff and how we operate when doing a gig. So let's get into it. So the first tip is to know your rig. Now by rig, it might be pedalboard amp, it might be guitars, it might be your microphone, your in-ear monitors, your drum kit, whatever it might be. Now it seems obvious to obviously know what gear you're using, but you'd be surprised how many people trip up on this. They get some new equipment, they go straight into a gig with it without fully knowing what they're doing, and that means everything takes longer. When you're doing a changeover at a festival or when you're supporting, you kind of have to fit around the headline act, which means you may not get a lot of time to set up. So this is all about being ready. If you're able to get things semi-set up off stage while the other band is still sound checking, get it all together, and then when you're actually allowed onto the stage, things will be as efficient as possible. For those guitar nerds out there, this is why, or one of the reasons that I use a switching system. It means if I want to try out a new pedal, I plug it into one of the slots on the switching system, and that means that I can still operate the pedal board as it was before. I have the added option of that new pedal without any differences to the functionality of my rig. Okay, tip number 2 is to create a system for sound check. I've seen countless bands, including bands that I've been in, turn up to sound check and it's everyone clamoring, oh I need more of this, I need less of this, and everyone's clamoring at the sound engineer at the same time, which of course stresses them out when there's only one of them and 3, 4, 5, 6 maybe of you. Brave Rival have found that it's best to have a system. So you do a bit of a song and then the sound engineer goes from left to right, right to left, wherever it is, along each member of the band, asking them what they want, and you wait your turn before you ask for what you want. This can also play into readiness before gigs. So Brave Rival's now using an in-ear monitoring setup for 3 members, including myself. We use our own desk with preset levels for our monitors, so tweaking is all that's really necessary during sound checks. But when it comes to festivals or any gig where we can't use our own desk, you're starting from scratch, so you really do need to have that system in place to make sure it runs smoothly. Sometimes sound checks can be as short as 5 or 10 minutes, so you really need to be organized. So tip number 3 is to network. Now, network is a term that gets thrown around quite a lot, and it tends to just mean meet people. In terms of gigging, I mean it a little bit more than just that. Of course, you meet people when you're gigging, but you're often working with people who you've never met before, or maybe only briefly. Firstly, with FM, there are obviously a lot of members of the band and crew that we didn't personally know. It tends to be best to make yourself useful. It's a great way of breaking the ice and also ingratiating yourself with these new people. At the end of the day, if you're supporting, this is their gig that they've allowed you on. So it tends to be the polite thing to help them load in if they're not already. If you arrive and they're still unloading things from their van, muck in, offer to help. If they turn you down, that's fine, but at least you tried, and it's a great way of getting to know them. Now the next tip is to not just learn the songs, but truly understand them. Now this can mean a multitude of things. Sometimes there are songs that have jam sections or bits that aren't going to be the same length each time, but sometimes there's also things that you need to call on the fly. For example, in my band Brave Rival, we have a song called Guilty Love. Now one of our singers, Chloe, does the lead vocal on the first verse, and she often uses the intro as a time to have a drink. That means that she's not always ready when the first verse comes around, so on the fly we choose the length of the intro. It's usually 1 time round, sometimes it's 2 or 3 depending on the situation. So I need to keep an eye on what she's doing to know when the time to change to the verse is. This This could also apply to solos, it could apply to looping choruses at the end, and often it's down to the vibe of the audience. If they're really into it, maybe you keep going. If they're not, maybe you cut it short. But you need to know the songs and the people you're playing with well enough that you can call those things on the fly. The fifth and final tip that I'm going to give you today is to have backups. This applies to just about anything you can think of. If it going wrong ruins the gig, you need to have a backup. So for example, I have 3 electric guitars at most shows. I have 1 main guitar, 1 slide guitar, and 1 backup. Now both the main guitar and the backup are tuned to E standard, while the slide guitar is tuned to open E. The logic of not having a backup for the slide guitar is simply that it's only used for one song. If I break a string, I just get to the end of the song before I change anyway. If something else goes wrong that means the guitar is not usable, I can quite quickly tune the backup guitar to be in open E and get on with the show anyway. My whole rig has been designed in such a way that if any one thing breaks, I can still easily do the gig. So with my amp, valve amps are notoriously unreliable, so I have their Line 6 HX stomp on my pedal board, which has an amp modeler in it. If needs be, I can plug that directly into the desk and do an entire gig that way. I have multiple overdrives on my board, partly because I'm just a gear nerd, but also it means that if one of them breaks, I can still do the gig using a combination of the others. I also have a 9-volt power supply in my case at all times, so if the power of my pedal board went down, I could take one overdrive pedal off the board, plug it into a 9-volt power supply, and do the gig just on that. Eagle-eyed viewers of our gigs will notice that I have a guitar cable coiled up at the side of my guitar stand at all times, just in case my wireless goes down. So I guess this kind of comes back around to the first point, know your rig. Make sure you understand it fully enough that if something goes wrong, you're covered. In any case, I hope you found this video helpful. If you have any gigging tips of your own, please put them in the comments below. I'd be really interested to read them. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed and you've got the bell icon ticked to be notified of new videos. Have yourself a great day, and I'll see you next time.